So continuing in chapter 5, and we were in the middle, and we were speaking about the comprehension that Moshe Rabbeinu, that Moses had of divinity, and how he understood divinity. And we said that even though he had a prophetic vision of the highest order, because of the highest order being the world of Atzilus, but nevertheless, he could only grasp the understanding, comprehend it through the facilities of the lower levels, even though he existed on the highest levels, and that his neshama, his soul, is one that potentially is united with the highest order, with the level of Atzilus. So in the words of the Tanya, Hasogas Moshe Rabbeinu was of the Elam Atzilus, but he could only grasp it. Now, remembering, grasping something or perception is two different things. Grasping something, perceiving, understanding, means that you're taking in your limited mind, in your limited capabilities, your limited spiritual capabilities, and understanding it and bringing it into yourself, as opposed to being able to appreciate that this is a higher order of thing. And I'll give you a simple example. It's not a comprehensive example, but it's a simple example. We all got our limitations, but we can go into an art gallery and we can see and recognize that there's a beautiful painting on the wall, but we don't necessarily understand it, meaning we don't understand and comprehend what the artist necessarily saw with all his details and how he perceived it. We can see it and appreciate how beautiful something is and how gorgeous, but not necessarily understand and comprehend it. So what we're saying with Musa, I'm going back to Moshe Rabbeinu, what we're saying with Moshe Rabbeinu is that his soul and his connecting to Hashem was of the highest order, which we call the level of Atzilus, the world from the realm of Atzilus, where the name Atzilus actually means bound to, and bound means bound to connecting to Hashem, Eitzel next to Hashem himself. But he could only comprehend it, that is, bring it into his finite, and even Moshe Rabbeinu being even the most spiritual of all our prophets, but he was still a human and still a soul in a body. So because of the constraints of the body, he had to grasp it via the tools of the next level, of the next world down. So comprehension in the world of Atzilus means experiencing intimately the infinite of the divine presence in its most primary stage. However, even Moses was told, when Moses asked Hashem, and he said in Deuteronomy, he says, "Let me see your." He asked to let me see your face, or whether it was in Exodus. And Hashem replies, "You cannot see my face." His comprehension can only be to a level which we call the back of Hashem. When a person sees something face to face, that's primary expression. When a person can only hint to what might be a primary expression, we use the expression of the back of the face as reference. So Hashem says, you can only look at the back of my face and still live, still be a finite being. So Moses can be of the revelation of Atzilus, but then he wouldn't be a finite being anymore. And so therefore it had to be translated for him through the next level down, through the level of Bria. Bria means creation, where created beings exist on the spiritual level, where created beings can exist and can comprehend. So the revelations of a higher order can be comprehended only through the vessels of the world below. So the revelations of Atzilus could be comprehended by the level of Bria, which that's what the Tanya said. While the lower world enables the otherwise unattainable comprehension of the higher world, but it also conceals the true essence and the true connective of the realm of Atzilus. And that revelation in the lower level is only a translation or a reflection of the higher order existence. And this is through, and that revelation is, like as we said, as we mentioned in the verse, the Hashem says, "You'll only see my acharayim, the my back," meaning you don't get the revelation of the full intensity of Atzilus, but how Atzilus is permeated through the world of Bria. So I'm continuing with the text of the Tanya, and then the Tanya then says, "V'af gamzeis," and even so, that he could not apprehend this level. Loid b'shtei midas elu chesed and gevura. He wasn't even given the revelation of chesed and gevura, because chesed and gevura is an inner power. Ella alidei yislavshus and b'midas shelamatza, but only through the encapsulament and the translation in the attributes of the lower order of the 10 spheres. Recall that I explained that within each order of the worlds there are the 10 spheres. The highest orders, Chochmah bin Adas. The second order is Chesed Gevurah Tiferes. The third order is the step towards the next level down, which are called Netzach Yisod. So that's the revelation that the Tanya tells us that Moses had. Moses' revelation of Atzilus was through the vessels of Bria and the lower order through the levels of spheres of Netzach Yisod. And therefore Hashem revealed to Moses the Chesed and Gevura, but through the vessels of the lower order, the Netzach, the Netzach of the Heid, because intrinsically speaking, we cannot connect to the divine. Because we are limited beings itself. We can connect to an aspect or revelations of the divine, but not the essence of divinity. We can only connect to the revelations of those things, of that, and that's what we said in the previous class, right? So that Hashem wanted to create the world, but then added in the midas harachmim. This is the mercy of Hashem, that He allows us to see at times glimpses via the miracles, because that happen in the world. Why miracles? Because, as we discussed, miracles break the nature of the world. Now, this needs a little bit of a discussion about what is our realms of existence. We live in a realm, we perceive in a realm of what we generically call nature, meaning the sun rises in the morning, the sun sets in the evening, the moon rises in the evening, sets somewhere during the night. When you plant a seed in the ground, nature allows it to grow and produce some sort of vegetation. A seed that you plant in the ground and it turns out to be a beautiful flowering daffodil or whatever it might be, right? That the daffodil itself bears no resemblance to the seed that you put in. The apple that comes from the apple tree doesn't bear any resemblance to the seed that you put in the ground. These are all miracles that happen on a daily basis, but we call them nature. And that's what we're used to. We're used to that the sun gets up, and that's what we call nature. We're used to that. We're used to our own existence, how we perceive them through our five senses. Godliness is not something which is locked into nature of the world. It can be seen through the world, but it's not locked in and not predicated by the world. What is a miracle? A miracle is when the order of the world changes, when something different happens that you're not expecting. That is, inverted commas, you could call that breaking nature in a positive sense, that the natural state of things has changed. All of a sudden, water, which normally flows from top down, right, all of a sudden stands up straight. That was one of the miracles of the biblical narrative when the Jews crossed the Red Sea. The Red Sea split, and there were walls of water standing up. That's breaking nature. Hashem broke nature, and the Jewish people could recognize God through this breaking of the nature. But this is not regular. This doesn't happen on a regular basis. This is not encapsulated in your regular mode of existence. So what the Tanya has just told us, that Moshe Rabbeinu, even the divine revelations to such a great and holy person as himself, was done through clothing and garbing higher than nature, in nature itself in some respects, but through the higher order of nature, and we're calling it the world of Bria, that Hashem revealed spiritual divinity to him, not divinity itself, but a reflection of divinity through the garbs and the lower order garbs, which we're technically called Netzach Yichud, right, of the level within the level of Bria, and all of that revelation is within the realm of prophecy, in different ways. This is divine perception embedded in multiple layers of concealment, and this is through the multiple or secondary stages that exist through the spheres. And the source of all prophecy experience is not necessarily in the highest world in Atzilus, because in Atzilus there is only the pure essential divinity there, where Hashem is one with Chesed and Gevura. But in the lower world of Bria, that's where a reflection of divinity can be expressed. But that level of Bria and that level of divinity of Bria is not even within the encompassing nature of the different angels. And as we say in our different prayers, there are the angels which are called the Seraphim and the Ophanim of the divine chariot, which they exist in the different realms of Bria. Yet the divinity does not necessarily invest themselves in them, and that's why they are given their names. Seraphim is given the name Seraphim or Seraph, because the word Seraph translates to a fire, meaning that when they see this level of spirituality, they are consumed with the fire, with the fire of Hashem. And similarly, the righteous in Gan Eden will have revelations which are revelations, spiritual revelations, but not necessarily divinity itself, but reflections of divinity. So this is the idea. This is within the idea that Moses and the prophets and the divine perception which they have of the different gradations have this divine perception, and this is what makes the godly soul that every human being has and every Jew has, that or I should say, the spark of godliness in every single creation, and in particular the Jewish neshama, that it is capable of rising and changing the status the status of its revelations that it has. The seraphim, the angels, the aphanim, the different angels, they are locked in robots at whatever level they are, as however high they are. But the Jewish neshama, the Jewish soul, has got the raw capacity to be able to lift itself up and see beyond its own limitations to the highest orders of spirituality. And and with that, we'll leave this section of the Tanya, and we'll come back to it at our next opportunity. Thing on. And so what we need to emphasize is that we have prophets in every single generation. We don't have Moses, and we don't necessarily have the 10 plagues, but in each generation, Hashem has placed righteous people in our generations, and that we can see and we can accord and we can connect to spirituality through these holy saints, through these holy tzaddikim, and certainly our teachers, all the Lubavitcher Rebbeim were all of that caliber. The author of the Tanya that we're speaking, and the Lubavitcher Rebbe, that we merited to hear teachings from and read his work, or at least nowadays we can see videos, hear recordings. All of this is revelations of godliness, Torah. That's what Torah is. Torah is God's wisdom, God's divinity embedded in wisdom shown to us. And therefore, it's important to emphasize that the Tanya said that that this embedding of the spirituality in the world by tzaddikim isn't just at that time. And that's what we say in our Seder, when we say in our Seder on Pesach, that the going out of Egypt wasn't just that specific going out of Egypt that happened in the narrative, but in every generation, b'chol day v'der, chayv odom liros es atzmei, a person has to see himself as if he goes out of Egypt, quoting the Seder words, the words of the Haggadah, that because we ourselves individually, through the power of the tzaddikim who encourage us or enlighten us, give us the power to go out of our own, inverted commas, spiritual bondage, and out to a higher realm through the different realms of spiritual realms that we go through. So we'll continue next time, and we'll continue the discussion.